All right, I'm going to be reading from the Private Oral Exam Guide. I'm going to be in Chapter 5, Cross Country Flight Planning, Section I, Runway Incursion Avoidance, page 5-71. What are three major areas that contribute to runway incursions? Communications, misunderstanding the given clearance, failure to communicate effectively. Airport knowledge, failure to navigate the airport correctly, unable to interpret airport signage. Cockpit procedures for maintaining orientation, failure to maintain situational awareness. Pre-flight planning for taxi operations should be an integral part of the pilot's flight planning process. What information should this include? Review and understand airport signage, markings, and lighting. Review the airport diagram, plan taxi route, and identify any hot spots. Review the latest airfield NOTAMs and ATIS if available for taxiway, runway closures, construction activity, etc. Conduct a pre-taxi, pre-landing briefing that includes the expected assigned taxi route and any hold short lines and restrictions based on ATIS information or previous experience at the airport. Plan for critical times and locations on the taxi route, complex intersections, crossing runways, etc. Plan to complete as many aircraft checklist items as possible prior to taxi. What is an airport hotspot? A hotspot is a runway safety-related problem, area, or intersection on an airport. Typically, hotspots are complex or confusing taxiway or taxiway runway intersections. A lack of visibility may exist at certain points or the tower may be unable to see those particular intersections. Pilots should be increasingly vigilant when approaching and taxiing through these intersections. Why is the use of sterile cockpit procedures important when conducting taxi operations? Pilots must be able to focus on their duties without being distracted by non-flight related matters unrelated to the safe and proper operation of aircraft. Refraining from non-essential activities during ground operations is essential. Passengers should be briefed on the importance of minimizing conversations and questions during taxi as well as on arrival, from the time landing preparations begin until the aircraft is safely parked. When should a pilot request progressive taxi instructions? If a pilot is unfamiliar with the airport or for any reason confusion exists as to the correct taxi routing, a request may be made for progressive taxi instructions, which include step-by-step routing directions. Number 6. After completing your pre-taxi, pre-landing briefing of the taxi route you expect to receive, ATC calls and gives you a different route. What potential pitfall is common in this situation? Common pitfall of pre-taxi and pre-landing planning is setting expectations and then receiving different instructions from ATC. Pilots need to follow the instructions that they actually receive and not the ones they expect to receive. Short-term memory is often limited duration. Number 7. Why is it a good idea to write down taxi instructions, especially at larger or unfamiliar airports? Writing down taxi instructions, especially complex instructions, can reduce a pilot's vulnerability to forgetting part of the instructions and provide a reference for readback of instructions to ATC. It can also be used as a means of reconfirming the taxi route and any restrictions at any time during taxi operations. Number 8. When issue taxi instructions to an assigned takeoff runway, are you automatically authorized to cross any runway that intersects your taxi route? No. Aircraft must receive a runway crossing clearance for each runway that their taxi route crosses. When assigned a takeoff runway, ATC will first specify the runway issue taxi instructions and state any hold short instructions or runway crossing clearances if the taxi route will cross a runway. When issuing taxi instructions to any point other than an assigned takeoff runway, ATC will specify the point to which to taxi, issue taxi instructions, and state any hold short instructions or runway crossing clearances if the taxi route will cross a runway. ATC is required to obtain a readback from the pilot of all runway hold short instructions. Number 9. When receiving taxi instructions from a controller, pilots should always read back what information? The runway assignment, any clearance to enter a specific runway, any instruction to hold short of a specific runway or line up and wait. Number 10. What are some recommended practices that can assist a pilot in maintaining situational awareness during taxi operations? A current airport diagram should be available for immediate reference during taxi. Monitor ATC instruction clearances issued to other aircraft for the big picture. Focus attention outside the cockpit while taxiing. Use all available resources, airport diagrams, airport signs, markings, lightings, and ATC to keep the aircraft on its assigned taxi route. Cross-reference heading indicator to ensure turns are being made in the correct direction and that you are on the assigned taxi route. Prior to crossing any hold short line, visually check for conflicting traffic, verbalize clear left, clear right. Be alert for other aircraft with similar call signs on the frequency. Understand and follow all ATC instructions, and if in doubt, ask. Number 11. How can a pilot use aircraft exterior lighting to enhance situational awareness and safety during airport surface operations? To the extent possible and consistent with aircraft equipment, operating limitations, and pilot procedures, pilots should illuminate exterior lights as follows. Engines running, turn on rotating beacon whenever an engine is running. Taxiing. Prior to commencing taxi, turn on navigation position lights and anti-collision lights. Crossing a runway. All exterior lights should be illuminated when crossing a runway. Entering the departing runway for takeoff. All exterior lights except landing lights should be on to make your aircraft more conspicuous to aircraft on final and ATC. Cleared for takeoff. All exterior lights including takeoff and landing lights. Note, if you see an aircraft in takeoff position on a runway with landing lights on, that aircraft has most likely received its takeoff clearance and will be departing immediately. What do we have? Okay, number 12. During calm or nearly calm wind conditions at an airport with an operating control tower, pilots should be aware of what potential hazardous situation. Aircraft may be landing and are taking off on more than one runway at the airport. Also, aircraft may be using an instrument approach procedure to runways other than the runway in use for VFR operations. The instrument approach runway may intersect the VFR runway. It is also possible that an instrument arrival may be made to the opposite end of the runway from which a takeoff is being made. 13. You have just landed at a tower-controlled airport and missed your assigned taxiway for exiting the runway. Is it permissible for you to turn around on the runway and return to the taxiway? No. At airports with an operating control tower, pilots should never stop or reverse course on the runway without first obtaining ATC approval. Number 14. When taxiing at a non-towered airport, what are several precautionary measures you should take prior to entering or crossing a runway? Listen on appropriate frequency, a CTAF, for inbound aircraft information, and always scan the full length of the runway, including the final approach and departure paths, before entering or crossing the runway. Self-announce your position and intentions, and remember that not all aircraft are radio equipped. 15. ATC has instructed you to line up and wait on a departure runway due to crossing traffic on intersecting runways. What is considered a reasonable amount of time to wait for a takeoff clearance before calling ATC? FAA analysis of accidents and incidents involving aircraft holding in position indicate that 2 minutes or more elapsed time between the time the instruction was issued to line up and wait and the resulting event, for example, land, over, or go around. If you have been holding in position on the runway more than 90 seconds or you see or hear potential conflict, contact ATC immediately. All right, that was section I, chapter 5, cross-country flight planning. That's ending on page 5-75. We'll hold off there. See ya.